somehow I'm stuck in this loop and I have to get myself out of the loop. And as I have that awareness of like, I have to find a way out of this loop or I'm going to it was like, I knew I'm going to repeat for this forever, not just for this life, forever. Like it's this loop of pain and trauma and little joys and relief, but it's never ending. And I just felt like my brain was melting with that knowledge that I can't, there's no way I can't do this forever. Whatever's happening, I have to get out of this loop. And as I have that awareness, I hear my name again, Jen, 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 come back to us, come back to us. And I look up and there's the eyes again. And as I look into the eyes and I maintain eye contact with these eyes, I start this process of remembering.
My guest today is Colleen. Jen had a near-death experience just a few short months ago in January of 2024 during an ayahuasca ceremony in South America. Jen, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you coming to share your story with myself and with my viewers.
Thanks for having me, Tia. This is going to be the first time I tell my story, so apologies in advance if I'm a little choppy. I don't even really know where to start because I haven't told it outside of journaling about it, talking to my therapist about it, and telling my partner about it. But on January 23rd, I was in Costa Rica for a week-long ayahuasca retreat. And the 23rd was my second ceremony of that week. There were 3 ceremonies during the week. And I had already had one ceremony on the 21st, and it was a beautiful ceremony where I was drenched in love energy and had a lot of really powerful insights come through. And then 2 nights later on the 23rd, I went into my second ceremony and had a completely different experience. This is not my first ayahuasca experience. I'm ayahuasca experienced, let's say. But this was the first time that something this intense happened where I was out of my body and witnessed myself die. I mean, I was in some other form above my body and I just watched my body die. And I I was told as I went into ceremony that night, I was told by a voice. I don't know how else to describe it, but like I mean like a voice that I could hear with my ears said to me 3 times, "You're going to die tonight. You're going to die tonight. You're going to die tonight." And like I had just this was before I drank the medicine, and I had just kind of said to myself like, "Oh, that's anxiety talking." I just really thought I was feeling nerves to go into ceremony because I'm pretty sensitive to ayahuasca, and so I do a lot of purging. So I always have a little bit of nerves before ceremony because I know, you know, purging is coming and it's uncomfortable. So I had just kind of said, just, that's your anxiety, Jen, and I put it on the shelf. But then I went into ceremony and I mean, that was my experience. I died that night. I knew I had died that night. I knew I was going to die that night. And when I came back, I was really sad that I wasn't dead because the experience like helped me like recategorize death completely. Because where I went was so much better than this. So our ceremony started and I started purging almost immediately. And I had set my intention to go slow because when I start kind of feeling the effects of ayahuasca, the first phase that I tend to go into is something I call clown world. And it's everything in this space is like, looks like technology and data and things are very fast moving and it's like cranks and wheels and it's this really uncomfortable place that I tend to always go into at the beginning of my ceremonies. And I wanted to, after my first ceremony, I had this feeling that there was something in that space that I needed to like learn from. But because it's so uncomfortable for me, I tend to have resistance in that space. And I'm kind of always in my ceremonies, like waiting for it to be over so I can be in the next space. So I had set my intention to be in that space to learn whatever it was that this space had to teach me. And so I had asked like spirit and Mama Aya to like be slow and gentle with me as we went into that space. And so I'm in that space and I'm like reminding the medicine, like, please go slow. I need this to be slow so that I can tolerate it. I'm a trauma therapist, and one of the like hallmark qualities of good trauma therapy is to slow everything down. Because when we have trauma and we try to process it, people's systems get really overwhelmed and then they get flooded. And so like I'm really attuned to understanding like how important it is to go slow and to titrate things so that people can be with it. And so I was kind of asking the ayahuasca to treat me with that tenderness, to go slow. And so I was in that space and I was having these beautiful downloads. And then it started to like accelerate like more quickly than I had ever experienced. It was like the fastest clown world experience that I had ever had in any of my ceremonies. And I started to become overwhelmed. And I knew I had to get out of the like ceremony space because I started becoming like really overwhelmed sensory wise because there's like a lot of smoke happening and the maestro is singing Icaros and he's got like instruments that he's shaking and like my whole body was just like I felt like I was gonna explode. It felt like every cell in my body was like sped up and like vibrating. And he was shaking this like rattle and there was smoke going. And I really just thought like my body's gonna explode. It's literally going to explode. I have to get out of the Maloka. And so I started crawling out to the Maloka and I remember thinking if I can just get to grass, if I can just like put my body on the ground and like feel the ground and like look up to the stars, then I'll know where I'm at. And if I know where I'm at, like I'll be okay. And so I get outside and I lay down in the grass and I'm in distress. I'm really having an intense experience. And so there was like a facilitator who came to support me and then another facilitator. There's kind of two of them like there to support me. And as like they were trying to like hold my attention, like with eye contact to help me stay in my body. And as I looked into their eyes, it was like I saw their face and I knew who they were. They were the facilitators. But also when I looked in their eyes, I could see that it wasn't them. It was like I looked like right at their soul and it didn't look like the person that they were. It was like I had this like really acute awareness that it was like my spirit team, whatever that means. I don't, like whatever that means, it was like I knew with every cell in my body that I knew them, but not here, like on this earth, like I knew them. Like there was this knowingness that I had known these two energies like for eons, for like lifetimes. And I like the one trip sitter, like I came into such astute knowingness of him that my body like was like awash in this great relief to find him. And I literally like tackled him. Like I like, tackled him down to the ground and I like wanted to like devour him because I was so relieved to find him. And it was like my soul was at home. Like, and I can't remember his name. It started with an N. I remember like an N sound, but I can't, as much as I keep journaling about it, the name isn't coming back to me. But I was like at home. I literally felt like I was looking for him through space and time, through dimensions for millennial, and we had been like lost and separated. And then I found him, and all this relief came in, and then I just dissolved like into like guttural tears, agony, and I really just like melted into him. And I started crying and saying to him, I'm going to die tonight. I'm going to die tonight. And he said, I know, you're going to die tonight. And then I started bargaining with God. I don't, like I've kind of reconceptualized how I see God. Like I'm not religious or Christian, but I'm spiritual and I believe in like Christ consciousness. But in my ayahuasca ceremonies, I have a lot of symbolism that comes through that's very Christian. Um, so I call it God consciousness, because I don't know what else to call it, but it's way bigger than anything I know my human brain can conceptualize. Like it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's bigger than I can understand. My human brain is just too tiny to wrap itself around what it is, but it's like the allness, the oneness. And so I'm bargaining with this with God, like saying like, I can't die tonight because I haven't like said goodbye to my children. I have 3 adult daughters. And I was in agony that I was going to die and not be able to say goodbye to my children. And so I was really trying to bargain with this energy of God, knowing that I was going to die. And there was this kind of back and forth that was happening. And he was like telling me, like, it's not in your control. Like you just have to surrender. You don't control this, you just surrender. And I was still resistant and bargaining. And he finally said to me, what if your death brings relief for your children? And my body like shot up. Like in my mind's eye, I went from like lying to like standing up, like in one movement. I'm sure that's not what happened, right? Like I'm sure I probably was on my knees and I stood up, but in my memory, it was like I just went boop, and I just stood there and I screamed, I surrender. And I fell down and I died. And like when it happened, like I came out of my body, like I could feel like all the kinetic energy in my cells that was happening earlier, like it was like it dispersed. It was like I was in a million pieces of dust, and it like came out of my body. And then I was like up here and I was looking down at my body, like laying on the ground, and I watched my body roll down a hill. Like I was like up on this little like um garden hill. So it was like lifted. It was like a mound. Not like a big rolling hill of Kentucky, right? But just like this garden mound that was, just above like level ground. And I watched my body roll down. And then I just was there looking down at it, and I just was in witness of it. And I was like face down on the ground, but I was also up here. And as that happened, I'm watching my body. I'm watching the facilitator who was there, like, I could see there was like panic energy happening. Like I could feel what was happening for every person who was there. Like the facilitator that was like holding me as I was dying was actually quite calm. Like I had the sense that he knew this was like all a part of the process. And he was quite calm, but like the maestro had come out and all the other facilitators came out and everybody was like around my body and there was like panic. And I could like hear like the 2 ladies who own the company, I could hear them like freaking out in their heads. Like they were worried about liability. I could hear it plain as day. They weren't saying it out loud, but I could hear, it was like I could hear their thoughts. And the maestro was like, I could hear his panic. He was trying to bring me back. Like I was watching him interact with my body. And he was like splashing like this stinky water stuff on me, and he was like chanting, and he was like blowing smoke like on my head, and he was like trying to get access to my face and blowing smoke in my face. And I was watching all this happen, but I was like so calm. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check out like what's going on. And I could hear somebody calling me. I could hear my name, Jen, 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 Jen. And I remember looking up and I could see like giant eyes. And I just looked into the giant eyes, and my body, this like energy body that I was, like started to like float up. And as it floated, it was like the space between the like cells or dust or whatever I was, like got more like distant. It was like I became more like fluid, more dispersed. And as I moved up into the dimension, it was like the bottom part of my body was like staying like this form. But as I moved like between these thresholds, like the top part of me would start to expand more. And the more that of me that came through, like the more it would start to expand, but I could feel like my body was in two different forms at the same time. And then as I moved into this like other dimension, I don't know how else to describe it. It just felt like this other dimension. I started to remember. Like I would start to remember like everyone I saw there. I was like, oh my God, you're all here. It's so joyous. I was like, and I would come through and I would remember everybody, and it literally like we would all be like running, but like it wasn't running, it was like bouncing. It was like my body, it was like anti-gravity. My body was like boing, boing, and we were all like running with this like joyous reunion. And I mean, I've never felt so much joy. And wherever I was, it was like made out of like clouds and water. I don't know how else to describe it. I think it was some substance that I don't like, I've never been exposed to, I'm not familiar with, but it like felt like clouds and water. It felt like buoyancy. And it was colors that I had never seen before. Like, again, I don't know how to describe it because it's like stuff I've never seen before. But it was like shades of like blue and pink and orange and like, but like in some spectrum that I've just never witnessed. But it was it was magical. It was literally magical. I like my heart had never been so happy to like see these people who I felt like I had been missing from for not just this life, but like for lifetimes. And I felt more connected to them than literally like anybody I've ever had connection with in this life. And I felt more at home there than I've ever felt here. It was so intense. But then I would slip back down. And as I slipped back down, it was like my body would come back into density and I would start to forget. And then I would be like lying on the ground again. And my brain would go through this like there was this looping thing that my brain, it wasn't actually a loop, it was a figure eight. Like I remember feeling the energy of it. And it was like a figure eight. And I would have these like little capsules of memory that came in, and it was like memories, just snippets, memories of joy, memories of like moments of trauma from my life. And it would just go in this loop. And there were places in the loop where I had the realization that, oh my God, this is all there is. I'm going to loop like this forever. And then I had the realization of this is the matrix. I'm stuck in the matrix. Like my pain is this matrix. And then it would come through that and I would like see my dog and I'd be like, oh my God, there's my dog. I love my dog. And it was just this loop of these things from my life and this awareness that washed over me of like, this is what's happening is somehow I'm stuck in this, like somehow I'm stuck in this loop and I have to get myself out of the loop. And as I have that awareness of like, I have to find a way out of this loop or I'm going to it was like, I knew I'm going to repeat for this forever, not just for this life, forever. Like it's this loop of pain and trauma and little joys and relief, but it's never ending. And I just felt like my brain was melting with that knowledge that I can't, there's no way I can't do this forever. Whatever's happening, I have to get out of this loop. And as I have that awareness, I hear my name again, Jen, 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 come back to us, come back to us. And I look up and there's the eyes again. And as I look into the eyes and I maintain eye contact with these eyes, I start this process of remembering again, like, oh yeah, I don't need to be in this loop. Like I can go back, like, and be with this family of mine. And so I start like rising again and like I'm crossing this, whatever it is, this dimension, this plane, this barrier. And as I slip up into that, the more I slip in and the more dispersed my energy comes, I start having this awareness again. It was remembering. It wasn't awareness, it was remembering. I mean, I really felt like I was remembering things that I had forgotten, like when I came into this body. And I'm up there and when I got back up, I remember saying like, this is Matrix. This is the Matrix. And like, there was one kind of like guide entity, I don't know, who was like the eyes. It was the person that I was making the initial contact to when I went up. It was a feminine energy. And she was like, yes, Jen, we're breaking out of the Matrix. She's like, you have to stay with us. You have to stay with us. And then I would slip back down. And then I would get lost in the loop. And then I would hear Jen, Jen, Jen. And then this feminine energy was guiding me to like breathe. Like she was like, Jen, breathe, breathe into your heart, breathe into your heart, feel your breath, stay connected to your breath. And I was aware that I was between dimensions. I was in two places at one time, and that something about that was the key, that it was a frequency, right? And I needed to straddle both places to maintain the frequency. Like it wasn't some other place that I got in my car and drove to. Like the other place was a frequency. And so she was guiding me to like breathe, to have some connection to my human form, while they were also like calling me up into this place where my energy was dispersed. And I remember like scanning the horizon as I re-entered one of those, because this like cycle went on. I mean, I have no sense of space and time there's no time when you're, sitting with ayahuasca, but it felt like hours. Could have been 2 seconds, I don't know. But the cycle definitely went on for like dozens of cycles where I was in the loop, having the epiphany, moving up. I remember like one of the times when I went up, I was scanning the horizons and I was like overwhelmed with this remembering that like we are all creators. I really don't even know what that means, but there was this messaging around we are all creators, and everybody looked like a giant, but not like a giant you see on TV, just like energy that was so big it was like uncontained from like the human form. And I mean, I felt I was like so strong. Like I really, I've anyone I've talked to about this, I've said like I really feel like I probably could have picked up a car and threw it across the room. I was so strong. And I remember like at one of the points where I was looking down and seeing what was happening with my body, like they were like I was being restrained because I was like my body was like thrashing. And I don't remember doing this, but I was told after the fact that I slapped 3 of the facilitators. I'm assuming that was because I was like being restrained, but my energy was not trying to be restrained. Like I never felt so much power, strength and power. Like I mean, my body could have like accomplished anything in those moments. And my voice was like I was screaming. I was doing so much screaming. I was screaming my daughter's names. I was one of my daughters, one of my daughters was like on the other side and was like clearly like on my soul team, my soul fam. I don't really know how to describe it, but she wasn't my daughter. There was no hierarchy between us. It was like this lateral relationship that we had. And I watched us sign a soul contract. Like my memory like went through this tunnel of time back to like, I don't know, a trillion years ago. And I literally saw us like make this agreement to have a contract where we would be together through lifetimes hurting each other until we like figured it out. And when I saw that moment, like my heart wanted to like find her in this other dimension. And I started screaming, "Where is my sister?" And I don't know why that came out of me, sister. But there was something about our energy is like feminine energy. And like I had this knowing that there was this like split that happened between us, but we were really one, but we had made this like split. And the voice that came through me was like not my voice. It was like my voice was like booming, like in my mind's eye, it was like echoing around the world. And I was like running, well, like leaping, looking for this energy of my sister who I had made this contract with. And when I found her, like we came together in this embrace. This was the part that the photo that you had posted that I commented on. Like this was that moment. Like we embraced and we melted to like into one another. Like we just kind of like melted or melded. Like it was like my cells and her cells just kind of came together, and then we collapsed in this like intense, like it was a combination of like relief, overwhelm, love, exhaustion, and we just melded and collapsed together, and we were like, we did it. We broke the matrix with love. It was like we cracked the code. And as that happened, like all around me was like, it was everywhere. It was all around me, like through me, under me, over me, around me was like some kind of algorithm. I knew it was an algorithm I was looking at. And it was like, it looked like a combination of like binary code and Morse code. And it was everywhere. And as that epiphany came through us and we were sharing that moment together, it like broke. I mean, it literally just like broke, like Truman Show, when like he notices that there's like the wallpaper is peeling or something, and he realizes he's in this like simulation. Like it just broke. And we were all like, me and my whole spirit team. Still, I mean, I don't really know what happened or who those energies were, but if that's what it feels like, we just all started like celebrating, like lots of swearing, like the word a million times. We were like, we did it, Matrix, we're getting a Matrix. And I don't even know how to describe the feeling I had. It was like this loop of pain that me, everyone I love, all of humanity had been like stuck in this crazy loop of pain. It was like we just broke out of the simulation of it. And it was this intense relief. But at the same time, I could feel that pull of like my body, like wanting to go back down, and like all of these cells wanted to like coalesce and go back into my body. And I was, so that's happening up here. And then down here, like I'm fighting, like to stay in my body or to stay in this frequency. I really haven't figured out what the hell is going on with me. I'm trying to just surrender and not be in my brain to figure everything out, because I don't think that's helpful. But I really don't know what was happening. But people afterwards told me, um, I mean, the ceremony was so intense that I think all eyes were kind of on me all night. And so, not that the next day we were in noble silence, so I couldn't process this with anybody. But the following day we came out of noble silence, and so then everyone was like, Jen, how are you doing? You know, what the hell's going on? And then they started telling me what was happening, because I didn't remember a lot of what I remembered. Everything that was happening up here. I didn't remember everything that was happening down here. Like I remember what I saw when I was experiencing myself looking down at it. But when I chose to like go into the remembering place, like I was not in contact with my body. And so I don't have memories for some of what was happening, but people were telling me what was happening. That's how I know I slept 3 people. I don't have any memory of that. But they were telling me that I was like beating the ground, that I was like pulling the grass and beating the ground, and that I was screaming my daughter's names, like in a very like in a mantra way. I don't want to say my daughter's names because, you know, protect their privacy, but I would say my oldest daughter's name, my middle daughter's name, and then my youngest daughter's name, and I would, and that was the one that I saw on the other side, and then I would like smack the ground, and that I was like chanting over and over and over again, stay in your body, Jen, stay in your body, stay in your body, Jen, stay in your body. So I know that like I was fighting to like be, I don't know if I was fighting to come back in, if I was fighting to straddle dimensions, but they said I did that for about an hour. Stay in your body, Jen, stay in your body, and then doing my daughter's names and beating the ground. And then they also told me that at some point and I have some memory of this. Um, my birth father, I found out a couple years ago that my dad is not my dad, and that my mom had an affair, and I'm the product of that. And I've done a lot of meditations, um, you know, where I've tried to kind of contact him, you know, just check in with his energy. And he's like a bad dude. And he took advantage of my mother. And I had set intention to meet him in a previous ayahuasca ceremony, and it didn't happen. Like what I had set my intention to meet my father. And what happened in that ceremony was I met God consciousness, and he said, your father is a speck of dust. Like you can't meet him any more than you would meet a speck of dust. And I met like the father, you know? Um, and so in this ceremony, I had set no intention to meet with him, but he was there. And when I looked into the eyes of one of the trip sitters, like it was him, it was my birth father. And I like remember like trying to like attack him, like trying to claw his eyes out, and like kicking and screaming and, you know, calling him nasty names, and screaming with like ferocity, my mother was innocent, like just this intense voice again that was like coming through me. And I don't my mother is not a great mother. I don't have a really good relationship with her, but in that ceremony it was really the first time that I like was really able to put myself in her shoes and feel unconditional love for my mother and for what she had gone through, that broke her so intensely that she would give herself so willingly to a predator. You know, and it's a hard awareness to have that you were born out of predation. And so And it's interesting, since I've gotten home, I can't get in touch with any anger towards my mother and one of my brothers, actually, who's been abusive to me my whole life. Like, the anger's just gone. I keep trying to get in touch with it because I don't believe it's really happening. Like, how I got that kind of memory reconciliation going, I don't know. So I have these old audio tapes of a conversation with my mother, and every time I go back and listen to that, I tend to get really like, I tend to get really heated up. And so I've gone back and listened to it intentionally to see, like, is it going to stir up the anger? And it's just gone. Like, my anger towards my mother and my one brother are just completely gone. I cannot find them at all. As a matter of fact, during that ceremony, I remember saying to one of the guides, like, please be kind to my brother, and having this awareness of his brokenness too. Um, very, very intense. I also met my grandfather in that ceremony, who had abused my mother her whole childhood. And it's interesting, when I saw him in the face of the sitter, um, I knew I was looking at something evil. Like, I had never, like, I do shadow work. And so I've like looked in the face of my own evil, or, my own darkness, my own shadow, and wrestled with that, trying to have compassion for the trauma that gave birth to those parts of myself. And I really try and hold that place of compassion for my clients. Like, whatever defenses people show up with, they're born out of pain, they're born out of trauma. And so I really try to be compassionate to those parts of people. Um, but when I looked into, like, the eyes of my grandfather, it was evil. It wasn't like a shadow part that turned dark because of pain. It was pure evil, like born evil. And I had never witnessed anything like that before. And as I came into that epiphany, like, I'm looking at evil, I got a download. I don't know, an awareness, remembering that, like, our human form isn't the real form, that we're here, like, really struggling and suffering pain, but really this dimension is like a vacation from everything that's going on out there. That, like, we're coming in and we're like, why do we forget everything, right? Because it's like everything we're dealing with out there is so intense that we're like gonna go take a nap on Earth. And I remember, like, having this awareness that, holy shit, we're fighting spiritual warfare. Like, that's what our souls are doing, is fighting spiritual warfare. And this matrix that I had realized I had been stuck in, this like simulation that I came into awareness of its existence, was this like thing, this energy that's like oppressing us and keeping us like in this loop that's disempowering us. Like, I really like, was coming through for me is like, we are all gods and goddesses. Like, we are all creators. I still have no idea what that means, but that's what comes through, is we are all creators. And like, our power is being shut down in this like spiritual war. And this matrix that I was looking at was the tool that whoever it is we're warring against, I didn't get any information or download, or I don't have any remembering of that, is like the method that we're being oppressed by. And then I also had some awareness come through that somehow we contributed to the algorithm, to the code. Like, that something about what we're doing as human beings is perpetuating the algorithm. It's feeding the algorithm. And so it's intensifying the algorithm, and we're keeping ourselves like locked in it and disempowered through our perpetuation of it. I don't have all that figured out either. But again, I'm just trying to like stay out of my head and just journal what comes through for me.
Do you think there's a way for us to break down the algorithm instead of building it up?
What I, what I experienced during my experience was that love is what breaks through it. Love. And it's kind of paradoxical for me to say that because as a trauma therapist, like I hold space for people's pain. And I believe that we like have the right to, I believe we should process our pain. We should tell our story of pain. We should be mad at people who hurt us. Um, like I think all that's valuable. Like we need to digest our pain. It's no different than food, right? Like our energy body needs to digest our emotions, just like our physical body needs to digest our food. And so I'm not like diminishing the importance of the process, but I think there's some tail end of the process that people are getting stuck in where they're not then coming through the pain and moving into love. People are getting stuck in this loop of identification with the pain. It's it's like an attachment to the suffering, and that's where we're looping. And we need to move out of that. And what I experienced was the path out of that was love and accountability. Um, that people struggle to move into accountability because they're so busy seeking validation for their pain that they're not looking at the pain they're causing others. And so they won't make amends, make apologies because they're too busy trying to get amends and get apologies. And there's a certain amount of relinquishing that and just kind of letting go and letting God that I'm not going to get what I need, but that doesn't mean I can't give what somebody else needs. Um, yeah, that's the best I can conceptualize it so far. Is love is the way out. And that came through for me loud and clear when I had that moment where I saw my sister daughter and we melded and it was like, holy shit. It was because we chose love. Like we had this soul contract to hurt each other. But finally in this lifetime, we chose love. And like she's 25 now, my youngest. And we've heard, I hurt her. I'm not going to say she hurt me. It's not her responsibility to hurt or not hurt me. She's my child. I'm a parent. So the onus is on me to set the stage to break the cycle. So I heard her a lot when she was young, when I was raising my kids, I was, I had a very traumatized childhood and I hadn't done any healing. And so I made a lot of mistakes in my parenting. And so I heard her a lot. But like the last 5 or 6 years, we've been intentional about healing our relationship. And so it was like that cycle that we had been in like for lifetimes. We started this life in that cycle. We started with the hurt and the pain, but we made the choice and we followed through with action. And it was like our coming back to the love that we had between us when we wrote the contract together. It was like we had found it, like we had lost it for lifetimes, and then we found it, and we chose it. Right? We could have chose not to. We could have continued to choose the pain. We could have continued to choose ego, but we chose love, and we did the hard work of love. And I mean, love is hard work. It's a verb, right? Love is a verb. You have to choose to love people. It's easy to judge, to feel the pain that relationships cause. It's harder to put aside your hurt and say, I'm going to come from love. I'm not going to get what I need, but I'm going to give what someone else needs. That's hard. And we've done that together. And that was the awareness I was having is we chose love. It was a choice. It was an effort. It was a verb. We chose it. And because we did, we cracked the code and we broke through and saw the simulation. It was like fear and hate and pain were the algorithm of the simulation. And when we chose love and that energy like erupted and became like the energy that like engulfed us in like a torus, like that was what cracked the code.
Do you think that by cracking the code, it was sort of like a graduation and you've learned your lesson and now you'll move on to something else in your next incarnations?
I don't know. I'm, to be perfectly honest, hoping I don't. I mean, I've been kind of bargaining not to have more incarnations here on Earth. I don't know if there's anywhere else to go. But that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't know.
Are you able to access that realm where you were with all of your soul family? Can you get that feeling now that you're here?
I mean, it's only been a few weeks, so um for the first week and a half afterwards, I was astral dreaming at night, and I was going back there. Um and again, having the awareness, my like I'm sleeping, but I'm in this other place. But that only happened for like the first week and a half, and it hasn't happened since then. And in meditation, I'm like tapping back into some of the feelings, and like more memories are coming through. Like, I mean, I really did not remember this experience in its entirety. It's been coming back through as the weeks go on. Um, but I haven't been able to like go back. But to be honest, I haven't set my intention, or like I haven't sat down in meditation and said I want to go back. Because mostly I've just been trying to process it in my human, experience. So I don't, yeah, good question. I don't know.
For some people, they may think that this was just an ayahuasca journey or a hallucination due to the ayahuasca, but you are very familiar with ayahuasca. Can you tell us how you feel it's different and is a near death experience versus a typical ayahuasca experience for you?
Well, first I want to say, at first I wasn't calling it a near-death experience. Um, my therapist is like a shamanic IFS therapist. And he kind of, when I was processing with him, he said, Jen, this sounds like a near-death experience. And because I had been Googling like shamanic terms, like I was like, what the hell happened to me? And he said, this sounds like a near-death experience. And serves people in this, he serves people with spiritually transformative experiences, near-death experience, people with, like abduction, you know. And so I started Googling like what happens during near death experience, and I found some scale. It was like a 20 question survey that gave you like a scale, and you needed like 7 out of the 20 experiences, and I had all but 3. And so then I reached out to a researcher who was like using that scale, and then I attended your group, I attended another group, um and everyone in that group was like, this sounds a lot like an NDE. Even Mooney like said he regrets using the term NDE because it doesn't have to be like a medical incident that gets you to death. And had I used another drug, it wouldn't be questioned, right? Like if it was cocaine or heroin and I almost died, this is just another drug. But what was different for me in this compared to my other ceremonies was being out of my body. Like in my other ceremonies, I knew I was like getting access to information that, I mean, I knew like in my other ceremonies, was like, your brain is like firing and rewiring. You can kind of feel it. And you're understanding things that you wouldn't normally understand. But in this experience, my I was out of my body. I I, I've never had that happen before where I was in a complete, I mean, I was out of I looked at my body laid there lifeless, and I watched like them like panic and lose their shit and try and bring me back to life. And I just watched it and was like, okay, well, they're gonna do their thing, and I'm gonna go over here into this other place where I felt peace and love. And I mean, to be, like, I'm new to this. So I, I mean, I'm a therapist, right? So I've seen psychosis and hallucination. There's no connection to like reality. Like we call people with psychosis, they have word salad. Like nothing's coherent, nothing makes sense, pieces don't connect, everything is random and happenstance. Um, that is not what was happening. I knew, I knew what was happening. I knew I was going to die. I bargained with God. I felt the experience of it. And then I witnessed myself come out of my body. And then I knew I had the body, and I knew I had some other form and went someplace else. So I'll leave that to the experts to decide, but I don't know what else to call it. Like, and the other people in the NDE communities who I've asked this to have said, sure the heck sounds like a near-death experience. So, I'm kind of deferring to people outside myself right now since it's so new for me, but I know that it was different than any other plant medicine ceremony I've had.
It does have a lot of similarities with near death, even clinical death experiences. It's beautiful, um, overwhelmingly so, I think, very powerful and has changed your life.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm only, I'm less than 2 months out, but um, I don't fear death anymore. I feel like I got the proof I needed that this, where we're at here, is that we are a soul in human form, and that this is just one phase. I don't fear it. I actually lost someone who's very dear to me 2 days ago. And there were parts of me that felt a little jealous, like that he moved on and I'm still here. When I woke back up in my body on that ground, and I remember, I don't remember coming back into my body, but I remember like touching the ground and realizing I was in my body. Like I put my palms down and I pushed my body up because I was lying face down. And I remember like, oh God, I'm back in this body. And I was devastated. And I couldn't believe that I was back and that I came back. And I thought, oh God, please don't bring me back here. Like I had surrendered, I had let go, and then I got to experience this like massive world of love, and I got to be back here. And like when we finally started integrating and processing, that was the primary piece for me that I was struggling with, was like, how do I be back here? How do I do this simulated bullshit again when I know what's waiting for me? So yeah, I mean, I'm still processing that. Yeah, that's been the trickiest part for me.
Well, keep me posted on your progress. I've seen some people who've had experiences and it takes years to unfold completely, and maybe it never even does unfold completely, but you continue to learn lessons and continue to process it for years and many years. And I've done the same for 20 years so far, and that's a long time. So I'd love to hear how you're progressing and what you're learning and getting out of it. I think that you'll find there's many, many more lessons inside the experience for you.
Yeah, I'm sure the lessons will be continuous and ongoing and probably never ending. Yeah, thank you, Tia.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest. If anyone wanted to reach out to you, if they had questions, would it be okay if they contacted you?
Yeah, yeah, of course, sure. Yeah. I go by Jen Colleen on Facebook. But my I go by Jen Colleen because I'm intending to change my name since I found out my dad is not my dad. Um, but my legal last name is Scully. And so if they Google Jen Scully therapist, all my stuff will come up. Um, yeah, I'm pretty easy to find.
Sounds good. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much, Jen. I appreciate you and I really enjoyed this time we had together.
Thanks, Tia. I appreciate you holding space and creating a platform for, for me to tell my story.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.